the TLDR is that some people left Mira Murati's startup Thinking Machines. And if you're not familiar with the story, Mira Murati was the former CTO of OpenAI, and she very publicly left and gave Sam Altman very little warning. I mean, it was like she had a one-on-one with him and then was out. And they were both kind of heartbroken and blah, blah, blah. And she raised, I don't know, it was like $20 billion. I don't know the number. It was pretty high number for her startup Thinking Machines. And then yesterday, the big news is that a bunch of the founding team and other like important people all left. And so then it was interesting because she announced that her CTO was let go. And then within like a few minutes on Twitter, people on OpenAI's team were like, hey, welcome back. So it's like, okay, the story quickly broke. And I don't know if the details have been confirmed, but this is what people from OpenAI have been saying on Twitter. Of course, there could be fake accounts, so take it all with a grain of salt. But it seems like the former CTO of Thinking Machines wanted to go back to OpenAI, and he allegedly shared like company secrets with OpenAI. So as soon as Thinking Machines found out, they of course fired him, and then other people followed suit. So this sounds very dramatic, and of course, a lot of us have our, I think, well-earned criticisms of OpenAI for being one of the most dramatic kind of clown cars of the AI world. Because, like, yes, Mark Zuckerberg has had his, oh, we're doing a super intelligence team, which then imploded a week later. But then he's been pretty quiet otherwise. And the XAI team has also been relatively quiet. Grok scores very, very highly on text, but it scores very lowly on coding and other things that like are solvable. So it's not that smart of a model. And Anthropic is oddly quiet, right? They're just chugging along on the enterprise space. They have much tighter information control and messaging control and that sort of thing. Now, personally, I think that the drama in OpenAI comes from the top. Sam Altman loves his drama. He loves being in the spotlight. He's very attention seeking. He's very status seeking. And he understands what Elon Musk does, which is that there is no such thing as bad press. There is no such thing as bad attention. With a few exceptions, there's a few things that you really don't want to get attention for, like when your users off themselves. So they respond more. They let the legal team handle that kind of event. But when they have a big PR win, right? When people leave to go, they defect to another startup, they go join Mira's startup, and then they come back. That's called a boomerang. So boomerangs are very, very typical, particularly in the upper echelons of technology. Even where I live in the Triangle area over in North Carolina, it is a well-known phenomenon because we have this tight cluster of tech companies. And of course, there's more tech companies coming. But once you get into the upper echelons, it's like people just kind of rotate through like, oh, I worked at this company and then I worked at this company and 8 years later, I'm back at this company. So boomerangs and revolving doors are not atypical in the tech space. It might sound weird if you're in another industry where, if a bridge is burned, a bridge is burned. But when you're a high talent person and if you leave on good terms, you can go back. So like I worked at Duke Health many, many years ago, and I was bored out of my mind because they were going through restructurings and stuff. So it was like there was intense projects and then there was nothing to do. And our team was just too big. So I left. And the director of our group, he said like, yeah, I put it, amicable departure. You can come back anytime. And he's like, maybe you can be part of the change of what you're frustrated with because you're a good guy, that kind of thing. Some companies I would not go back to, and some companies don't want me back. And the feeling is mutual. But my point is that in technology, revolving doors and boomerangs are pretty typical, particularly for top talented individuals. So then the biggest thing, and this is taking a big step back there. Okay, there's the he said, she said, she said. There we go. He said, she said drama. And I do think that Sam Altman is a drama mama. But the most important thing here is that with artificial intelligence, there is no moat. There is no intellectual property moat. Most of the research is done by universities and even a lot of the companies. Google still publishes open source research. Meta China, everyone publishes their research open source. Why? Because they all realize that defecting from that regime of saying, oh, I'm going to keep my research private. Now, obviously, there are some trade secrets going on because, Claude has figured out something with coding, and I don't know what XAI has figured out, if anything. ChatGPT has figured out some stuff that other people can't. They seem to be the world leaders in math, although Google DeepMind is not that far behind. So there's basically no moat in terms of technology or intellectual capital or that sort of thing. And one of the reasons that I think this happens, that they're all pretty much moving in lockstep, is because of that revolving door relationship. Now, California, where most of these big companies are headquartered, has very, very powerful worker protections, namely that what's it called? Non-compete agreements are illegal in California. They're completely illegal. So basically, in many industries, part of your employment or part of your severance might be you sign a non-competition agreement, which basically says, I'm not going to work for any of your industry competitors for 6 months or 2 years or whatever. Those are flat out illegal in California. And so you can go work at DeepMind, and if you get a job offer from Microsoft or Meta or anyone else, they are not allowed to stop you. Now, of course, there are other things that they can do to try and discourage that, like, they'll claw back any vested shares that you have or that sort of thing. But that looks pretty bad too. Like that looks really kind of skeevy. If it's like, oh, we're going to punish you, even though you were a founding team member and you have shares worth $10 million or $100 million, we're going to invalidate and claw back those shares because you defected. Because that's just like, really, you're just going to be that kind of capitalist dog? I thought you were working to create AGI for the betterment of humanity. And when you allow this kind of talent poaching, that increases the intellectual capital of humanity. So it's like it really looks super skeevy when people like OpenAI try and claw back shares and punish people for going for either doing a startup or defecting to Google or whoever else. And so the point is that that a lot of the research is public, but then there are still the really supremely talented individuals, whether they're good team leaders, whether they're good researchers, whether they have good intuitions on the math and the coding and whatever else. So as you allow people to circulate through these tech spaces, then you end up, it's kind of like the old fashioned model where you have like an apprentice, a journeyman, and a master. What they're doing is they're on their journeyman phase. So if you're not familiar with this, the way that you would learn to be a blacksmith, for instance, or even a physician, is you'd start off as an apprentice, which is you work under your local master, whoever it was, whether it's a physician or, carpenter or mason or whatever. And so they teach you the basics, and mostly you just do grunt work. You sharpen the tools, you clean the tools, you gather materials, you do a lot of the grunt work for the master until you get to the point where you're good enough, and then you become a journeyman. And so then as the journeyman phase, you are literally journeying around from village to village and town to town, doing work on different projects, working for different masters, so that you're getting a well-rounded education in whatever your discipline is: carpentry, stonemasonry, being a physician or a doctor, being a blacksmith, whatever have you, so that you learn from a bunch of different experts. That's what a lot of these people are doing. When you say, oh, I'm going to go work for Mira, I'm going to go work for Ilya, I'm going to go work for Sam, whoever it is that you're working for, you get socialized, you get indoctrinated isn't the right word, maybe inculcated with different cultural values and different approaches. And so then you go work for Andrej Karpathy and he has different values. And then you go work for Elon Musk and he has different values. And so, on the one hand, like that's the most optimistic reading, right? You get this well-socialized cohort of AI experts that are able to take a lot of their expertise and a lot of their values and a lot of their experience and plant it in these different companies, meaning that raises the tide for everyone, which then ultimately humanity benefits because we don't have just a one-trick pony out there where it's like, NVIDIA. So here's an example of what I mean. NVIDIA currently dominates the silicon market for the accelerator market. It's something like 90% of data center accelerators for AI. That's good for them, but it's not good for humanity. What would be good for humanity is if we had 3, 4, 5, 6 competitors that could allow people to pick and choose their accelerators, because then competition drives down price. Competition also increases quality. But if you want to be in the data center AI accelerator space, NVIDIA is pretty much the only place to be. But at least with frontier models, you've got XAI, you've got Google DeepMind, you've got OpenAI, you've got Meta. And then of course, that's just the American ones. And that's not even all the American ones. Then you've also got the Chinese ones. You've got DeepSeek and whoever else, Baidu. I haven't seen that much research out of Baidu. They were like the Google of China for a while, but it seems like DeepSeek really is the Chinese leader right now. But the point is that this intellectual socialization is good for humanity. And I kind of ran out of steam. I think that's all I have to say today. Yes, there's a lot of drama at OpenAI, but what you're seeing is basically it comes down to the revolving door, boomeranging, and talent poaching. All of that is just pretty typical. And it's just OpenAI loves broadcasting their drama. They love airing out their dirty laundry, and it's kind of funny, and it keeps them in the news cycle. But ultimately, I just see this as a good thing for humanity. So it's like, yeah, it's kind of funny. You're like, ha ha, you lost, and so we love that. We love gossip. Just as our little chimpanzee brains love whatever the drama is. But taking a step back, talent poaching, it's just part of the game. All right. That's all. Cheers.